It was an ordinary afternoon in a quiet Ohio town, the kind of day where nothing unusual ever seemed to happen. The sun hung lazily in the sky, casting a golden glow across the streets, and the familiar scent of fries and freshly grilled burgers drifted from the McDonald's at the corner inside. Was business as usual. Families laughed over Happy Meals. A group of high school friends argued over who'd eaten the last nugget, and a tired delivery driver sipped his coffee while scrolling through his phone. The rhythmic hum of the soda machine, the sizzling of the fryers, and the chatter of customers created a comforting, everyday soundtrack. But then, something changed. The door suddenly swung open, not dramatically, but enough to make a few heads turn. A few seconds later, conversations began to fade. The laughter quieted. Even the beeping of the fryer timer seemed distant, almost muted, because standing right there, framed in the doorway, was Donald J. Trump. No security guards rushing in. No motorcade parked outside. No reporters or flashing cameras. Just Trump himself, dressed sharply in his navy suit, his signature red tie catching the light, and that unmistakable confident stride that everyone in America recognized. For a split second, no one moved. You could feel the air shift, a mix of surprise, disbelief, and pure curiosity. A teenager near the counter dropped his fries and whispered, "Is that Donald Trump?" His voice trembled just enough to make the nearby customers glance up, confirming the unbelievable sight for themselves. The cashier froze, her eyes darting between the former president and the register screen. Even the manager peeked out from behind the kitchen door, holding a clipboard, mouth slightly open. Then, like a wave spreading through the room, the realization hit. Phones came out instantly. Cameras clicked. Some people whispered, some gasped, and others simply stared, unsure what to do next. It was as if time had paused. A once ordinary afternoon suddenly transformed into a moment no one in that restaurant would ever forget, and just when everyone thought they'd seen it all. Trump smiled, nodded politely at the stunned crowd, and walked up to the counter. What happened next would leave everyone speechless. Trump walked straight up to the counter like a man on a mission, confident, calm, and completely at ease, as if he'd done this 1,000 times before. The restaurant was still buzzing from the shock of his arrival, but Trump's energy immediately filled the room with something else: excitement. "Hello there," he said cheerfully, flashing his familiar grin. "How's everyone doing today?" "You guys are working hard. Very good. Very impressive." The young cashier standing behind the counter looked starstruck. She tried to keep her composure, but the tremble in her voice gave her away. Mr. Trump. "Welcome to McDonald's," she stammered. "What would you like to order today?" Trump tilted his head back, squinting up at the bright digital menu boards as if he were examining something very serious. "You know," he said, pointing toward the glowing picture of a burger, "I've always loved the Big Mac. It's a classic. You can't beat it. Tremendous sandwich." He paused for a moment, as if considering the weight of his next decision. Then, with a confident nod, he added, "All right. I'll take 1 Big Mac, 10 McNuggets, a large Diet Coke." The cashier smiled, her fingers flying across the screen, and then Trump said something that froze the entire restaurant. "And I'll pay for everyone here." The sound of typing stopped. The soda machine hissed in the background. You could have heard a pin drop. The cashier blinked. "I'm sorry, sir. Did you say everyone?" Trump leaned in slightly, smiling. "Everyone. Great people here. Hard-working Americans. Let's feed them all. They deserve it." For a moment, there was silence. Then came a wave of gasps, followed by murmurs of disbelief. A man at a nearby table nearly dropped his fries. "Wait, he's paying for everyone?" Within seconds, the quiet hum of the restaurant erupted into cheers. Phones came out, flashes filled the room, and the buzz spread faster than wildfire. People outside started pressing their faces against the windows. Some even ran inside, phones raised, hoping to catch a glimpse or maybe a free meal. After all, who wouldn't want to say they got McDonald's paid for by Donald Trump himself? What started as a normal lunch rush had suddenly turned into a once-in-a-lifetime event, and no one could, believe what was happening right before their eyes as the kitchen staff scrambled to prepare the enormous order. Trump didn't just stand idly by the counter. Instead, he did something no one expected. He began walking around the restaurant, talking to people one by one with genuine interest. There was no microphone, no stage, no crowd chanting his name, just Donald Trump, moving from table to table, greeting ordinary people who couldn't believe what was happening. His first stop was a young man, sitting alone near the window, still in his delivery uniform, a reflective vest draped over his chair. The man had been quietly eating his lunch, trying not to draw attention, but Trump noticed him immediately. "Working hard?" Trump asked, his tone friendly and sincere. The young man straightened up, nervous but smiling. "Yes, sir. Trying to keep up with all the orders." Trump nodded approvingly and gave him a firm pat on the shoulder. "Good man. That's what it's all about, hard work, determination. You're the kind of American that keeps this country running. Don't ever forget that." The man grinned, clearly touched. Around them, people listened in silence. There was something unexpectedly human about the moment. Simple, honest, and warm. Then Trump turned toward an elderly woman seated by the window, sipping her coffee and watching everything unfold with a mixture of disbelief and joy. She had a small American flag pin on her jacket and a soft smile that spoke of wisdom and years gone by. Trump approached her with a gentle nod. "How are you doing, ma'am?" She smiled, her voice trembling slightly. "My husband was a veteran," she said quietly. He would have loved to see this. He always admired strong leadership. Trump lowered himself slightly, bending down so he could look her in the eye. "Please thank him for his service from me," he said softly. "And thank you, too. Families like yours have sacrificed more than most people will ever understand." Her eyes welled up with tears. She reached out and squeezed his hand, whispering, "Thank you, Mr. Trump." The entire restaurant seemed to pause again, but this time the silence wasn't out of shock. It was out of admiration. Trump didn't sound like a politician giving a speech. He sounded like a neighbor checking in, someone who cared about the people in front of him. And in that small-town McDonald's, for a few extraordinary moments, everyone felt that connection real, honest, and deeply human. By now, the entire McDonald's was buzzing with energy. Employees darted back and forth behind the counter, trying to keep up with the avalanche of orders that had just been placed. The fryers sizzled, the ice machine clattered, and through it all, laughter and disbelief filled the air. From the back of the restaurant, the manager, a middle-aged man in a black uniform and visor, hurried out, his expression a mix of thrill and panic. He wiped his hands nervously on his apron before stepping up to Trump. "Sir," he began cautiously, "we really appreciate what you're doing, but this is quite a big order." Trump chuckled, that familiar grin spreading across his face. "Don't worry," he said confidently. "We're going to make McDonald's great again today." The line drew a round of laughter from customers and employees alike. The manager shook his head with a grin, still half in disbelief at what was happening in his restaurant. But then, Trump did something no one could have predicted. He took off his jacket, folded it neatly over a chair, and began rolling up his sleeves. "You know what?" he said with a playful grin. "Let me help." The entire room froze. Even his Secret Service agents glanced at each other, unsure of what to do. But before anyone could react, Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, stepped behind the counter. He grabbed a paper bag, turned to the first family in line and said, "Here you go. Best fries in the world, right?" The mother gasped, covering her mouth in surprise, while her two kids giggled uncontrollably. Trump smiled, leaned down slightly, and whispered, "Eat up, kids. It's on me." Phones flashed from every angle. People were cheering, clapping, recording. Trump passed out burgers, nuggets, and drinks, joking with the staff as if he'd worked there his whole life. "Careful with those fries," he laughed. "They disappear fast, believe me." Even the employees, who had been nervous just moments ago, couldn't stop smiling. They handed him trays, and he handed them out proudly. It's like a man enjoying every second of the moment. And for that short while, beside that humble McDonald's, there were no titles, no politics, and no debates. Just laughter, kindness, and people sharing food and smiles together. In the most unexpected way possible, about 30 minutes had passed. Though to everyone inside, it felt like time had completely stopped. The smell of hot fries still filled the air. The counters were covered with trays and soda cups, and laughter echoed off the tiled walls. One by one, every single person had been served. Some walked away with full bags of food, others with autographs or selfies. But all left with a story they'd tell for the rest of their lives. Donald Trump wiped his hands, straightened his rolled-up sleeves, and looked around the restaurant with a satisfied smile. "That's everyone?" he asked the manager. The man nodded, still half shocked. Trump smiled wider. "Good job, folks. You handled it beautifully. Tremendous work." As he slipped his jacket back on, the crowd gathered near the exit, waiting. Phones were already recording, flashes blinking like starlight. Trump turned toward them, paused for a moment, and then raised his hand in a small, thoughtful wave. "Take care of each other," he said, his voice carrying over the hum of excitement. "Work hard, love your families, and never forget, you're all part of what makes America great." The restaurant erupted into applause. Some clapped, others cheered, and a few even began chanting his name. Trump gave a final thumbs up, a grin crossing his face as he stepped toward the door. The sunlight spilled across the floor as it opened, and his signature red tie fluttered lightly in the breeze outside. A few bystanders cheered and waved as the door closed behind him. Cars honked, people shouted his name, and the small McDonald's became the most talked-about spot in the entire state. Within hours, the internet exploded. Reporters raced to confirm what they were seeing online. The hashtag Trump at McDonalds began trending worldwide. Clips flooded social media, Trump joking with the cooks, carefully serving fries, even helping an employee carry a tray. News anchors replayed the footage again and again, amazed by the down-to-earth moment. But beyond the headlines, something deeper resonated. People agreed it wasn't about politics or power. It was about kindness. It was about connection, laughter, and the simple joy of doing something good for others. Whether you supported him or not that day, Donald Trump reminded everyone that sometimes it only takes one unexpected gesture, one smile, one shared meal to bring people together, and that's why, when Donald Trump walked into that McDonald's, what he did next truly left everyone speechless.